It's...
Thank you, Sophia. A very busy show. First of all, Labour in crisis as Rosie Duffield, Labour MP, renounces the Labour whip. A big problem for Sir Keir Starmer. We'll react to that with the papers at 10:30. Plus, the former deputy chairman of the Conservative Party on the fact that we'll have a new leader, most likely a week early, so we'll get reaction to that. Also, Phillip Schofield gets the Take at 10 treatment at 10 o'clock. And do the BBC have a problem with Reform UK? Lots to get through, but we start with my big opinion. Surely trans madness has reached its peak, given that we are asked on a daily basis to discard and renounce the basic principles of human biology and science. The hellish and nonsensical mantra that men are women and that women are men is wearing thinner than Elton John's hairline. So, what's the crazy story that will finally end this insane ideology and wake everyone up? A male double rapist who identifies as female, imprisoned in a women's jail? Well, that was Isla Bryson, real name Adam Grant. Amazingly, that story didn't end the madness. In fact, Adam Graham is now suing the prison authorities for misgendering him/her. You couldn't make it up. Perhaps biological males smashing women in professional sport, breaking all records, or even taking the top prize in female beauty contests will see an end to this mad stuff. Or female boxers being obliterated in the ring, as we saw at the Olympics in Paris this year. Nope. The insanity prevails. In fact, the British legal and political establishment, now suffused with wokery seemingly to the point of no return, has been flirting with the idea of making misgendering someone illegal. That means that if you or I called someone with a penis and testicles a man, that's right, if we called someone that's got a willy a man and they identified as a woman, we could go to jail. So we could go to jail for saying something which is actually the case. But it goes on. Just this week, a mustachioed man refused to leave a nightclub's female lavatory because, yes, you guessed it, he identifies as a woman. A young girl called Connie Shaw, who's just 20, was attending a club night for students at the warehouse in Leeds on Monday when she confronted the man in the women's toilet. She said that he refused to leave and told angry revellers, "I identify as a woman." A bouncer was then alerted to the situation and kicked the guy out. But this very brave young girl, Connie Shaw, told The Telegraph the following. She said, "He said right away, I identify as a woman, because he knows, and other men know, that that is what will get them into women's spaces." This is progress, is it? The brilliant journalist Charlotte Gill revealed this week that the NHS is asking patients what their sex was at birth. It's worrying, isn't it, that those responsible for our health don't seem to realise that our sex at birth is also what it is now. Don't take my word for it. Here is one of the world's leading experts on human reproduction, Professor Robert Winston, speaking on the BBC Question Time show.
I will say this categorically, that you cannot change your sex. Your sex actually is there in every single cell in the body. You have a chromosomal sex, you have genetic sex, you have hormonal sex, you have all sorts of different kinds of psychological brain sex. They're all different. And we are very confused about this, unfortunately.
Aren't we indeed? Poor Professor Winston will probably be burned at the stake for stating this biological fact. But facts don't matter anymore, as demonstrated by this story. A trans rapist sentenced to more than 6 years in prison was referred to as she throughout the trial by a judge and barristers. Lexi Secker was convicted of rape after a 4-day trial at Swindon Crown Court in June. The court heard that Secker was living as a man when the attack took place in April of last year. Throughout the sentencing hearing, barristers and the judge referred to the defendant. This is a racist, OK, rapist. This is a convicted rapist. They referred to this defendant as Miss Secker and she. But in a victim personal statement, the woman raped by Secker used male pronouns and the name Alex to describe the defendant. She said, "He took away my trust in people and myself. The assault consumed me with shame and fear." Well, I've got to tell you that all of this madness fills me with shame and fear. We are living in a parallel universe where we've got to ignore the evidence of our own eyes and ears, throwing women under the bus as their hard-won sex-based rights are trampled by men in dresses and stilettos. Now, there are trans people. They have human rights. They deserve love, respect and care and recognition like everyone else. I've got close friends that have been on that important journey. But let me be clear, men are not women and women are not men. Until we accept that basic truth, things are only going to get worse. Lipstick, a skirt and female pronouns do not a woman make. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. Don't forget, at 10 o'clock, I will be dealing, in no uncertain terms, with Phillip Schofield, who's trying to wheedle his way back onto TV, and he's getting the Take It 10 treatment in an hour. You won't want to miss it. But first, tonight's top pundits, historian and broadcaster David Oldroyd Bolt. We've also got journalist and communications advisor Linda Jubilee, and a very warm welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight in our lovely studio here in Paddington, to broadcaster and TV personality Precious Muir. Precious by name, precious by nature. Listen, your reaction to this, Precious, because I'm not even a woman and I'm insulted by this.
Yeah, I think it's really insulting, to be honest. And the red flag here for me is the fact that, you know, obviously there is impersonators and there is real transgender individuals, and they're getting muddled together, right? Because I know transgender women, and first of all, the first thing they want to do is actually be taken seriously as a woman. The last thing they want to do is date another woman. So this is a big red flag for me, that these impersonators are going in female spaces and attacking, sexually assaulting women, when real transgender women do not do this. They want to be seen as a woman. They date men, they want to be seen as a female. So the last thing they want to do is to be going into gym spaces and stuff like that, attacking, or bars, and attacking females, trying to date them. This is why I say it's difference between an impersonator and an actual transgender individual.
Linda, I'm a guy, so I can't answer this question. I'm going to ask you, how does it feel if a biological male comes into a female lavatory? What are your emotions at that point as a woman?
Well, I can't say I've actually encountered that situation too often, but I will say that I worked for a charity, an Afghan charity, that had gender-neutral toilets. They had to, because the family used the space for their sort of family ablutions, if you like.
Yeah. And
there were men and women in the family. And I would say that it didn't really affect me. I barged in on a couple of men once or twice. I think it affected them. But...
Well, they were counting their blessings.
Indeed, maybe. That's the case. But what the issue here that strikes me is one of safety.
Yeah.
That's the real key issues. I've been attacked twice in my life. On both occasions, the police were called. Those were very severe incidences. I was lucky to get away more or less unscathed. So I'm naturally careful about putting myself into dangerous situations.
Yeah.
And one of those dangerous situations would be to go, for example, to a public convenience where a man was inside. I would be horrified, really horrified. And I think we should pay very close attention to this. There are two areas where this kind of thing actually really counts. One is sport. It's very, very important that we get clear on this subject.
Yes.
And the other is we need to protect women with some women-only spaces, because otherwise we are endangering women. We're endangering them in certain sports, particularly like boxing. You've outlined that. Yeah. That has happened, where women have been severely compromised, and we endanger them sometimes in public spaces. Predators, sexual predators of any description hide in plain sight. They look for situations where they have the upper hand, where they have the power. We only have to look this week at Mohammed El Fayed to find out how that power can be abused.
Exactly.
And that's what we're dealing with right now.
They use the penis as the weapon. So the problem is that we need to have that removed. I believe in castration, and I feel like anybody... Oh, yeah, if you are sexually...
Offender?
Yes, 100%.
Do you mean chemical castration?
Well, I don't know, just remove the ball nipples and whatever you got to do, because I believe that
Are you
it will
talking
stop
about
them.
removing
yes,
the organs?
I believe that if you are constantly
cut
out
is the
here,
deepest.
if you are constantly out here sexually assaulting women, you should have that happen.
Poor David Alderall is now
Oh.
sweating in that tweed jacket of his. David, I don't think most of my viewers and listeners this panel tonight have a problem with trans people.
No, not
we
at
probably
all.
all know
Not at
someone.
all. They're two very different people.
That's it. I know people who have gender dysphoria, have been on that journey, no problem. The issue is the mantra or the ideology that men are women and that women are men.
The Russian dissident and author Alexander Solzhenitsyn said that in keeping silent about evil, we implant it. And I think over the past few years, and I remember that instance on Question Time when Lord Winston said what he said, and the shock on Fiona Bruce's face that he would dare to say such a thing was an enormous contrast with the looks on the faces of those in the audience who knew this to be the truth and were waiting for someone of his eminence and undoubted scientific capability to step forward and say it so that they themselves felt capable of saying it. There has been essentially a conspiracy, I think, in recent years of people at the top of society who want to change this aspect of the way that we see men and women, and who have used their power and influence to do so. And I think it is about time that those of us who know this to be wrong, know it to be wrong for women and know it to be wrong in a general sense, were not afraid to say it. Implanting evil by maintaining silence does a disservice to women, and it does a disservice to those very, 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 very few people who are, in fact, truly gender dysphoric.
Exactly.
Is there a flip side to this? Is it extremely rude, discourteous and perhaps mentally damaging to not acknowledge somebody's chosen gender identity? So if you do misgender someone, is there an argument that actually that is offensive and that is out of order? Perhaps not a prison sentence, but your collar felt?
I shouldn't say it's offensive. It's perhaps a failure of good manners in certain instances. But when this is having such an effect on society, when men are being put into women's prisons and therefore putting women at serious risk of harm and assault, then we have an absolute duty to say that this is wrong and it must not continue.
Although, Precious, isn't there a danger of transphobia here and demonising trans people who seem to be responsible for all of the ills of our society these days?
Well, I don't think... We just have to make sure that we're aware that there are transgender individuals who don't want it to basically take away the rights of women, but we're kind of clumping them together and not acknowledging the fact...
being lazy.
We're not acknowledging the fact that there are men out here who are using these little, you know, loopholes to get into these spaces and have nothing to do with the transgender community.
Last word, Linda?
You only have to look at, for example, the security rules they employ at somewhere like Disneyland to stop predators on children, to realise that you have to have very strict guidelines when it comes to keep people safe, be it children, be it women. The point here is you have to keep people safe, and you can't sort of overinflate intellectual arguments and dismiss the hard facts of life.
Two powerful words. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. Developing tonight, the Conservatives are expected to sensationally bring forward the result of their leadership contest in order to provide opposition to the budget in November. So, a Tory leader is coming sooner than expected. I'll get reaction from a former deputy chairman of the party next. Thank you.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sports broadcaster Gary Lineker is to cut his pay for Match of the Day. So he's in talks with the Beeb over a multi-year deal for Match of the Day after volunteering to take a pay cut.
Yeah, so he is volunteering £350,000 to knock off his salary, so he'll just be taking home a comfortable £1 million. So, you know, maybe he'll need some clothes donations as well. But you can't really argue with that, can you? I'm sure that money will be spent better elsewhere.
It's still a massive salary, isn't it?
It is still a massive salary. I think the thing with things like this is that I don't know how much of appeal, and, you know, I'm not the biggest football fan in the world, but, you know, how much of an appeal does Gary Lineker have? And when you think of the BBC, where it's not really out to make profit, I really feel like jobs like that should go to young upstarts, young presenters, getting in new talent, rather than paying the old talent £1 million.
Yeah, I reckon, Esther, if you ask Match of the Day viewers, do you tune in to see Gary Lineker or do you tune in to watch the football highlights? They tune in to watch the football highlights.
They tune in to watch the football highlights and fall asleep on the sofa.
Yeah.
They don't care about Gary Lineker and all of his cronies and all of his mates. He gets the same people in again and again. Look, I think talking about optics, because we're talking about optics today, aren't we? About the clothes and everything. Gary Lineker, the optics. What a hero. That's what he's doing. He's making himself look good by giving back in his way. I mean, absolutely, we want new talent. I would much rather have more voices and different people on Match of the Day. I watch it occasionally with my family. I wouldn't tune in myself that much.
I can never stay
But have the same people all the time.
Yeah.
To be fair, the plot twist here is that was it Jermaine Jenas? Was that his
Yes,
name?
last time we were here.
Was kind of like set to take over, or that was the rumour. But now obviously that's not going to happen. So it might have been that Gary was out the door, and they've actually said, "Oh, actually stay a bit longer."
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Well, a big reaction to my big opinion. A male rapist was referred to as she throughout the trial. The world's gone mad, and you tend to concur with what I've had to say. This from David, who says the trans issue is not an issue about sexuality. It is a political one. Well, you're absolutely right. And if you're just joining us, let me bring you a big developing story politically. Rosie Duffield, who is a gender-critical Labour MP, has resigned the Labour whip. She's fed up with the party, its narcissism, the freebies, and of course there's a long history of her conflict with Keir Starmer over women's biological rights. How about this? Just stop, says Freddie. A man is a man, a woman is a woman. Any government anywhere who is saying otherwise are either completely incompetent or duplicitous, just plain looking for votes. And Angela gets the last word because, Angela, you're very wise tonight. Angela says, we are supposed to be an intelligent species. So why are we continuing to discuss that biological born men can be women? It is a nonsense. Angela couldn't agree more. It's time now for this. Yes, it's time for the big story, and in a Daily Mail exclusive, the paper report that the Tory leadership contest is set to be cut short, scrapping the November deadline to allow Rishi Sunak's successor to take on Rachel Reeves at next month's budget. Senior Conservatives are in talks about bringing forward the announcement of the party's new leader, allowing the new leader to take charge in time to respond to Miss Reeves' budget on October the 30th and help prevent the climax of the contest being buried by the avalanche of news surrounding the US presidential election on November the 5th. Well, let's get reaction now from a very senior figure within the Tory party, former deputy chairman, no less, Jonathan Gullis. Jonathan, great to have you on the show. The timeline was far too slow, wasn't it? This is a good move, wouldn't you say?
Well, I hope it turns out to be true, Mark. Actually, I wrote about this prior to the rules being put in place, that this should happen because there's only 2 times that any Conservative leader is going to get airtime before Christmas. That's Conservative Party conference and then the budget. And it's really important that the new leader has time with their new team to set out a thorough defence, especially after we've seen the blunders from Labour robbing the winter fuel payment from pensioners in places like Stoke-on-Trent, where that £300 goes a long way to people being able to heat their homes. Obviously now increasing tuition fees without actually solving the real issue, which is, do we really need to have as many degree courses as we do? Why are we not putting more into further education or into degree apprenticeships instead? And then obviously the rumours potentially of the 25% single person discount on council tax being scrapped, potentially fuel duty being hiked too. This is going to need a very strong response. And so I do hope this does happen, albeit I don't really like seeing the rules change during a contest. But I think it's absolutely important for the Conservative Party and for the country, they have a strong opposition to mount a defence against this tax-rising budget that's on its way.
Of course, the Labour government would argue that they've inherited an economic mess from 14 years of Tory misrule. But, Jonathan, you were supporting Priti Patel. You told me about it on this show, acting as her campaign manager and chief troubleshooter. So, in her absence, what are the qualities you're looking for in the ultimate winner?
Well, look, first of all, I think that party conference is the game in town. I remember saying to Priti that if we got to the final four, we were going to put all our energy into party conference, because whoever comes out with the most buzz amongst members will therefore put enough pressure on parliamentarians to ensure they get to the final two. And I think ultimately that buzz will continue to make sure they get elected to become party leader. So what we want to see is a really wide range set of policy proposals, nothing too detailed with the opposition, but at least the direction of travel in terms of what the leader's going to stand for, what conservatism means to them. Someone who can infuse and engage our membership. It's been battered and bruised. They feel very disillusioned. We need to get them motivated for a very tough fight in May's local elections next year, where we're defending the overwhelming majority of seats, and we'll have not just battles with Labour, but battles with Reform, where places like Great Yarmouth and Clacton have local elections as well. And then finally, someone who is actually going to understand the importance of returning the party to its members, actually making sure that we're not dictated to from central campaign headquarters in Westminster, but this party is the members are valued as party, not just getting the weekly emails of the begging bowl for more donations, but actually having full choice over the selection of its candidates. And I think that so far, from what I've seen, Robert Jenrick goes into that in front in terms of that broad approach. But I do think it's Robert or Kemi's to win or lose based on what we've seen with the parliamentary vote so far. And that speech is going to be a big moment. Who gets the audience going? Who can do a speech that doesn't sound wooden? Who can motivate and create emotion amongst the audience? And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing.
And whether it's Badenoch or Jenrick, or the other two candidates, of course, we've got the former Home Secretary and indeed, of course, let's not forget Tom Tugendhat as well. How does the next leader solve a problem like Nigel Farage?
Well, I think essentially what you have to do is build credibility. So take your time to actually come up with a set of policy proposals that you know that can be delivered. Be brave enough to say them, even if some of them may be deemed controversial by certain figures inside the SW1 bubble, but actually resonate predominantly with the wider British public and hold your nerve. If you look at what's happened in Canada, I think in particular what the Conservative Party has done there successfully it's gone back to being a party that's pro-cutting taxes with the carbon tax that Justin Trudeau's imposed upon his people, pro-house building, something that Labour's actually stolen the mantle off the Conservatives. So whilst we have to be constructive in our opposition, actually making sure that we don't become NIMBYs, because we have to build homes, that helps create growth. It also allows people to aspire the dream of owning their own home. And then we have to obviously make sure that that leader has a very clear plan, let's be frank, on the issue of immigration. Labour are doing nothing. We've seen that with over 10,000 now people come here illegally since Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. Reform have a proposal. The Conservative Party must have something that is credible and that people will be delivered. And again, Robert does have an advantage of having resigned in over principle on that. And that is something that Kemi's going to have to work tremendously hard, as is James and Tom, to counter.
Is the modern Conservative Party too left-wing and too woke?
No, I don't believe it is. I believe what the Conservative Party has to understand is, and I saw Theresa May's sort of odd article today where she was talking about the centre ground, but the problem is that too many people have made out the centre ground some fixed thing. The centre ground is actually where it is flexible, it moves with time, and it's actually up to a leader of a party to determine where the centre ground is. That's why, again, Canada is another perfect example. Mr. Poilievre out there, the Conservative Party leader, has made a very distinctive and clear platform and looks like he's on course for a landslide victory over the super woke Justin Trudeau, who's presided sadly over Canada and over the G7 in terms of his net zero nuttiness agenda that he's been keen to pursue since he's been there. So and virtue signalling at every opportunity. So I think that's very important to understand that it's not, you've got to have courage of your convictions and your beliefs, and you've got to sell it to the public every time, whether that be Clement Attlee, Tony Blair, Margaret Thatcher, or even Boris Johnson, where they had a clear, distinctive vision of what they wanted to see the country, and the public gave them all overwhelming mandates to deliver upon that. And that's what the Conservative Party needs to recapture.
Jonathan, very briefly, if you can, notwithstanding whoever becomes leader of the Conservative Party, most likely towards the end of October, before the budget on the 31st, do you think it's inevitable that whoever wins will have to work in some way with Nigel Farage in order to prevent a decade of Labour in power?
I think if you're talking about work, in terms of how Parliament operates and using opposition day debates, obviously questions on the floor of the House, those kind of conversations behind the scenes will always happen with opposition parties of all kinds, that Liberal Democrats will also be included. Do I want to see us do a deal with Nigel Farage? Absolutely not. He's been perfectly clear that he wants to see an end of the Conservative Party and wants to destroy it, and therefore makes it untenable and unviable for any such deal to be done. And it's a shame. I like Nigel personally. I think he has a lot to offer. I had hoped prior to him claiming the leadership of Reform that he would come into the Conservative fold once again, and I think we should have made overtures earlier on to bring him in to the Conservative Party. But he's made his bed. He needs to lie in it. It's our job now to take on Reform and essentially make them redundant, and then we can make Labour redundant afterwards.
Jonathan Gullis, always a treat to have you on the show. Catch up soon. My thanks to the former Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, Jonathan Gullis. Interesting stuff there. Gullis suggesting that the Tories should have reached out to Nigel Farage and brought him into the family, into the tent, sooner than they have. Of course, now he's got Reform UK, and a political revolution is playing out before our eyes. Time now for the Great British Giveaway, and the biggest cash prize we've ever given away. £36,000 could be yours. That's right. That is like having an extra £3,000 tax-free in your bank account every month for an entire year. Here are the details that you'll need to make it happen.
You could be the next Great British Giveaway winner with a whopping £36,000 in tax-free cash in your bank account. Imagine getting the winning phone call for that.
You never expect to win.
It was unexpected, of course. I only put in one little entry.
I blocked the phone number to start with.
I always say get your entries in. If I can win it, anybody can win it.
For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB08, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Brilliant stuff. An almighty BBC row has broken out as Question Time host Fiona Bruce is forced to apologise after wrongly correcting Reform UK chairman Zia Youssef. Do the corporation have a problem with Reform UK? We'll debate that next.
Good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead to Sunday, it's going to be dry in the east, wet and windy in the west, with heavy spells of rain and strong winds. So we've had a ridge of higher pressure over us through today and through this evening, so that's giving some settled conditions. But this is the area of low pressure waiting out in the wings for Sunday. But back to this evening, many places seeing a dry night tonight with clear spells. We'll still see a few showers around, especially across northwestern England and across Scotland as well. But on the whole, we'll see some clear skies, and that will allow temperatures to fall. So we may see a touch of frost, but also some mist and fog patches to start Sunday morning. But it will be a chilly start out there for some of us, especially across parts of Scotland, where we'll see a touch of frost in the sheltered glens. But still, across Orkney, we have got some longer spells of rain here and a few showers further towards the west. Across Northern Ireland, cloudier skies in association with that area of low pressure. But further to the east you go, drier here with plenty of bright or hazy sunshine to start Sunday morning. But it's going to be a different feel further towards the west. We've got stronger winds, and we have got a Met Office wind warning in force through Sunday with gusts 50 to 60 miles per hour, as well as some heavy outbreaks of rain. But further the east you are, that's where we'll hold on to the best of the sunshine, perhaps just some milky skies out there, feeling pleasant in the sunshine up to 14 degrees in the north and slightly milder further towards the south. But unsettled for many of us on Monday. We also have a rain warning in force for southern parts of England and Wales, so expect some difficult driving conditions and further flooding. Unsettled as well across Northern Ireland and Scotland throughout much of Monday, but turning drier as we head into Tuesday and Wednesday with temperatures up to 18 degrees. Bye-bye.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, on Thursday, the Reform Party chairman Zia Youssef called out the huge number of asylum seekers coming into Britain on TV panel show Question Time. But the host, the BBC's Fiona Bruce, was quick to intervene. Youssef pointed out that the UK takes in more asylum seekers per capita than France, but Fiona Bruce abruptly shut him down. But let me tell you...
France does take more per capita in terms of asylum seekers than we do. I think Germany might as well, but France takes more per capita. We are quite far down the list.
However, later in the show, she was forced to pause the show and correct herself.
Before we move on, I just want to say, Zia, you are right, in fact, that France takes fewer asylum seekers per capita than the United Kingdom. We take more than that. It's important to get that right.
Oh dear, what an epic fail. So does the BBC have a problem with Reform UK and Nigel Farage's political revolution? David Oldroyd-Bold.
I think the BBC has and has long had a problem with any political view that is in any way to the right of itself. The problem with the BBC is not, I think, that it is out there to broadcast socialism as a matter of faith. It is that its entire staff is made up of primarily young, metropolitan-dwelling humanities graduates who tend to veer that way anyway, and so it becomes the inherent culture of the organisation, even if it's not their political bias. And every time they're confronted with something that goes against that, their immediate reaction is to shoot it down. Their immediate reaction is to call it into question, rather than giving it a fair and honest hearing, as we saw in that clip from Question Time. I don't think the BBC really knows that this is what it's doing in a policy sense, as it were. I don't think that there is some directive from the Director General going out saying, whenever you get someone right-wing, you must call them into question. I just think they don't question themselves about it. And I think that's always been the way the BBC has been as long as I've watched it.
Linda, we all make mistakes. I'm broadcasting many hours every week. I make mistakes. I get things wrong. I'll put my hands up. That's what's happened to Fiona Bruce. What's the problem?
But it's just that she made that assumption. She naturally went to that assumption. And I think what happens when you listen to an awful lot of BBC broadcasters, it's nuanced. It's leaning a certain way. You couldn't quite put your finger on it, but it is anti-reform. I think you can tell that, and maybe maybe people do feel anti-reform, but you shouldn't.
4.1 million people don't.
Did not.
They quite like it.
And the BBC, our national broadcaster, shouldn't be. It should be far more objective than this. It shouldn't be leaning any way at all. But I think David's exactly right. There's no diktat that's been handed down. No directive has been handed down. It's just that the kind of people who are interviewed and selected, who work there, lean a certain way, and they want to portray things a certain way. And I can tell you now that I think it aggravates a fair number of viewers.
Well, indeed. I think we saw that during Brexit, didn't we? Certainly, I've got viewers and listeners who email me saying they gave up watching or listening to the BBC during Brexit because they seem to be so against it. Now, the Beeb would argue they work very hard to put out politically balanced output. Question Time itself is a politically balanced audience. The panel represents the full spectrum of views. What do you think?
I think basically they don't want to isolate the people that vote for them, and they believe, like, for example, there is a lot of people that pay the TV licence who are Labour voters, and so they don't want to isolate them, and that is the reason why they go to that side. I believe that they have this kind of understanding that if we don't, we could lose people.
So you think the Beat feels it's got to be left-wing?
Yes, I believe
survive?
that they have to steer towards the Labour voters because they're the ones that are paying for the TV licence.
Indeed. I mean, do you feel that the way Conservative voices are treated on shows like Question Time is different to, say, those on the left? Have you seen a difference in how they're treated by the host?
I think slightly, because obviously, as you said, they're keeping in mind and who's actually watching and who's paying for the TV licence. So they have to, you know, they know who the viewers are.
Do you think that Fiona Bruce, for example, interrupts Conservative politicians more than perhaps politicians of the left, Linda?
No, I think that, and I'm not sure this is just the BBC, but when I listen to the Today programme, when I watch BBC broadcasts, I think they interrupt politicians too much.
Right, of all colours.
Of all colours, and that's an issue. They want to be seen as argumentative. They want to see us they're stirring the pot. I don't think they're necessarily interested in getting enough information out there. The mission to explain has been curtailed.
What about the BBC's Nick Robinson's sneering interviews with Nigel Farage on the Today programme that you just mentioned? I mean, would Nick Robinson talk to other politicians in the way that he talks to Farage?
No, not all politicians, but I remember that broadcast, and that was extremely unfair. Even when I watched Tom Harwood was on Newsnight the other night as a panellist.
Yeah, he did very well.
And he did very, very well. That was an excellent contribution he made. But there were little jibes going on there. I could see they were nudging away at him, particularly David Yelland, the ex-editor of The Sun, was a little bit, you know, nasty, actually.
Perhaps, briefly, David, Fiona Bruce, who's an excellent journalist, an experienced broadcaster, is alert to some of the sort of populist back-of-the-fag packet nonsense that you get from Reform UK. Perhaps she's on alert because Reform UK have said a few things that they can't back up.
But as chairman of Question Time, that's not her job.
Yeah.
It is the job of the other panellists, the other contributors, to pick up where there are errors in thinking or where there are clearly fantastical policies that will never work. I just think, I go back to what I said at the beginning, it is a reflexive liberalism throughout the BBC that shows itself far too often. Indeed. And I, like a lot of your viewers, I gave up on the Today programme during the Brexit referendum campaign because it became clear that they were absolutely incapable of a disinterested broadcasting operation.
OK, well, let me tell you, the BBC will be very clear. They have robust checks and balances to ensure that the output is politically neutral. Coming up, my Mark Meets guest is Britain's foremost Angela Rayner impersonator. She's hilarious. Take a listen.
Settled on just going with 14 years of Tory failure and far-right riots, and that was why he said the things that he said. And, you know, he has been grilled. He was grilled by Susanna Reid as well. I mean, she did not go easy on him. She even pulled out a pensioner. She pulled out a pensioner.
Well, this very secretive and elusive comedian has broken the internet with her hilarious videos as the Deputy Prime Minister, and in a Mark Dolan Tonight exclusive. She joins me next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Founded in 1990 in Knightsbridge in London, the Beverly Hills Bakery offers some of the finest American baked goods in the United Kingdom. Beverly Hills Bakery has delivered gifts to all the UK Prime Ministers of the last 20 years, with, I think, the exception of Sir Keir Starmer so far, and provided gifts for the royal family and for royal births. As we near the 35th anniversary of the bakery, I'm joined by the owner and head pastry chef, Rosa de Souza, and Manuel de Souza, who is the director of the Beverly Hills Bakery. How marvellous to see you both. Welcome to GB News.
Thank you for inviting us.
So, why has this formula worked? Why did London need a Beverly Hills bakery?
What we do is we're a bakery, but underlying it's actually a gifting experience.
Right.
So this is an alternative to flowers. So in terms of concept, that has maintained its originality despite going on for 35 years. And in fact, what I do is I often ask myself, why is it going strong? To remind myself to focus on those things that we need to focus on.
So instead of sending a bunch of flowers, you send a beautiful box of cakes like that, or confection like that, complete with bunnies and so on.
Exactly. So you have the concept on the one hand, but you also need the quality of product that goes inside. And I think that's where Beverly Hills Bakery has got a great product.
And it's where Rosa comes in, isn't it?
Yes.
So when did you start to bake? Did you start to bake domestically in your home, and did it spread from there?
We started from home. My mother's baking, where we didn't have all the stoves and things like that. We baked on the charcoal, you know, like the grease.
Yes.
And we started baking. I learned from my mother the baking.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In just 15 minutes' time, in my take at 10, TV fraud Phillip Schofield makes a comeback after an inappropriate relationship with a far younger colleague. Well, Phillip Schofield gets the take at 10 treatment. You won't want to miss it. But first, this. Yes, it's time for Mark Meets, and tonight, the world's foremost Angela Rayner impersonator. She's broken the internet with several hilarious videos about the Deputy Prime Minister. Jenny, known online as Intel Lady, joins me now in a Mark Dolan Tonight exclusive. Jenny, a thrill to have you on the show. We're going to play the videos in a second, then I'm going to meet Angela Rayner. But did you expect your videos impersonating the Deputy Prime Minister to make such a splash?
No, not really. I've been doing it for quite a while. I impersonate quite a lot of different politicians on both sides of the aisle, as well as I cover whatever story happens to be in the news. And I don't know quite when it happened. It was several weeks ago, I think, that people started picking up on it and spreading it around, and there you go, boom.
Well, listen, it's been amazing. And I mean, has it largely been a positive reaction? What do people think of it?
Largely positive. I think a lot of people enjoy it. There are some people with no sense of humour who think that it's to do with my personal political leanings and don't understand that, no, it's just satire of sort of everything that's going on. In the same way that Spitting Image would cover sort of anyone and everyone, that's kind of what I do. But when they see, I guess when they see their favourite up there being sort of mimicked, then they don't like it.
Well, I totally agree with you. The whole point about satire is that you mock whoever is in power. Well, you're brilliant at it. A massive career beckons. So I'm excited because I believe that Angela Rayner is just brushing her hair and getting ready for this TV performance, this TV interview in which she'll get a grilling from me. But before we meet Angela, here are some of Jenny's highlights. Take a listen.
Hiya. It's Deputy Prime Minister, proud Northerner and basic instinct enthusiast Angela Rayner, and welcome to another no-brainer with Angela Rayner. Now, Orokia is having a mentee bee. That's Gen Z speak for mental breakdown. He's still got really, really bad memories of Greg's being raided, so sometimes he thinks of sausages, and it was just at that moment something must have maybe it was his stomach that triggered him. We think it's more inclusive to say conference. Rather that we could have used delegates, we toyed with the idea of saying comrades, but we decided that the best thing to do was to say conference, and that way it is much more inclusive to people. So we thought that was a good idea.
Well, I'm delighted to say, in a very much a first for this show, I'm joined now by the Deputy Prime Minister. That's right, Angela Rayner. Miss Rayner, great to have you on the show. First of all, you've just been to Labour Party conference. Did you have a good time?
Do you know what, Mark? We had an absolutely fantastic time in Liverpool. All of us laboured together, everybody joining in. It was completely inclusive and fantastic. We really did. We got stuck in, and everybody, all the speakers were really well received. I did a speech. I don't know if you noticed, I opened the show, and it was really, really positive. It was positive vibes, Mark. It really was. It was fantastic.
Well, I'm not surprised, Deputy Prime Minister. After all, it's been reported that you've received several £1,000s worth of expensive clothes and a posh trip to New York in a multi-million-dollar penthouse. Can this be justified, Deputy Prime Minister?
Right, we got that. You know what? Do you know what, Mark? We started off nice, didn't we? We started off, we did a softball. I like the softball. And now you're coming in hard. You are coming in. I don't know if I'm at GB News or the P. Diddy Freak Off. I don't know what's going on. But I will say this. You know what? We have answered all of the questions, and we've been upfront and honest. And, you know, I don't understand why everybody has to keep going there. Everybody, instead of asking us about policy and positive stuff that us Labourers have done, you're going in straight away with scandal. I've had enough. I
wondered whether P. Diddy might come up. Now, Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, tried to demote you in a cabinet reshuffle before the election. You wound up having more jobs, not fewer. Is there bad blood between the two of you? Do you not get on?
Do you know what? We do get on. There's no bad blood at all. I don't know why people have to keep going there with this. Me and our Keir were like this. We're close. And, you know, he comes round to mine for tea. Sometimes I go to his for tea. Obviously, I've had to knock sausage and mash off the menu, but we get along so well. And I don't see any sort of, I don't know what this demotion's all about. I don't understand it. I've been given a role which suits me best. Houses. So, you know, I don't understand why anyone would see that as a demotion. I don't.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned houses. What is the story about where you were living 15 years ago? There seems to be a lot of confusion, Deputy Prime Minister.
Right, you know what? I lived in an house, right? I lived in an house. It's been put to bed. It's been done to death, and I have had enough. So move it along.
We will move it along. Do you see yourself as a future Labour leader?
I don't think that is where my thought process is right now. I'm quite happy with where I am, with what I've been tasked to do. I'm doing it well, and I don't think about things like that, Mark. I don't think about that. I'm just focusing on what I need to focus on.
Well, indeed. I know you had a good time in Ibiza. You were with a DJ, you were dancing around. It is, of course, Saturday night. The night is young. So do you have plans for this evening, Deputy Prime Minister?
Well, I think after this interview, I think I just need to go and lie down in a dark room, to be perfectly honest with you.
Let me tell you, it's been a privilege to have the Deputy Prime Minister on the show. Angela Rayner, thank you for joining us. The big political voices appear on this show. That was, of course, Jenny, the Intel lady. If you want to see her brilliant videos, head to YouTube, TikTok, and her handle, as I say, is Intel Lady. Next up, it's my take at 10, and I'll be dealing with Phillip Schofield. You won't want to miss it.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead to Sunday, it's going to be dry in the east, wet and windy in the west, with heavy spells of rain and strong winds. So we've had a ridge of higher pressure over us through today and through this evening, so that's giving some settled conditions. But this is the area of low pressure waiting out in the wings for Sunday. But back to this evening, many places seeing a dry night tonight with clear spells. We'll still see a few showers around, especially across northwestern England and across Scotland as well. But on the whole, we'll see some clear skies, and that will allow temperatures to fall. So we may see a touch of frost, but also some mist and fog patches to start Sunday morning. But it will be a chilly start out there for some of us, especially across parts of Scotland, where we'll see a touch of frost in the sheltered glens. But still, across Orkney, we have got some longer spells of rain here and a few showers further towards the west. Across Northern Ireland, cloudier skies in association with that area of low pressure. But further to the east you go, drier here with plenty of bright or hazy sunshine to start Sunday morning. But it's going to be a different feel further towards the west. We've got stronger winds, and we have got a Met Office wind warning in force through Sunday with gusts 50 to 60 miles per hour, as well as some heavy outbreaks of rain. But further the east you are, that's where we'll hold on to the best of the sunshine, perhaps just some milky skies out there, feeling pleasant in the sunshine, up to 14 degrees in the north and slightly milder further towards the south. But unsettled for many of us on Monday. We also have a rain warning in force for southern parts of England and Wales, so expect some difficult driving conditions and further flooding. Unsettled as well across Northern Ireland and Scotland throughout much of Monday, but turning drier as we head into Tuesday and Wednesday with temperatures up to 18 degrees. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We love making our audience big cash winners, and you really could be next. With £36,000 tax-free cash in your bank account. Imagine getting the call about that.
Angela, you've won £30,000.
£30,000 cash?
Yes.
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. That's brilliant news.
For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB08 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online. In the United Kingdom and across the world, this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10, TV fraud Phillip Schofield makes a comeback after an inappropriate relationship with a far younger colleague, and he lied to everyone around him. Do these people know no shame? Phillip Schofield gets the Take at 10 treatment. You won't want to miss it in 2 minutes' time. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary have both attacked Donald Trump in the past. But now Sir Keir Starmer meets the man who some polls suggest will be the next president of the United States. So, if Trump wins, is it game over for their special relationship? We'll head to the US for reaction. Plus, historian and broadcaster David Oldroyd Bolt giving his reaction to the big stories of the day, alongside journalist and communications advisor Linda Jubilee and broadcaster and TV personality Precious Muir. Plus, at tomorrow's newspaper front pages and a Labour bombshell for Sir Keir Starmer. A packed show, lots to get through. I'll be dealing with Phillip Schofield in 2 minutes. Is not pretty. That's my take at 10. First, beyond reproach, the one, the only, Sophia Wensler.
Mark, thank you. Good evening. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom at 10 o'clock. David Lammy has spoken to the Lebanese Prime Minister following a series of Israeli airstrikes on Beirut. In a post on X, the Foreign Secretary said they had agreed on the need for an immediate ceasefire to bring an end to the bloodshed. It comes after the terrorist group Hezbollah confirmed their leader had been killed in airstrikes on southern Lebanon. In a tweet this morning, the IDF say Hassan Nasrallah will no longer be able to terrorise the world, while US President Joe Biden says his death is a measure of justice for his many victims. The Lebanese Health Ministry is reporting that at least 11 people have now been killed and 108 wounded in the attack in central Beirut. Soldiers and aid workers have been taking part in rescue operations looking for survivors and victims in the rubble. Now back in the UK, Rosie Duffield has resigned as a Labour MP. The Times newspaper is reporting that she's blaming Sir Keir Starmer's cruel and unnecessary policies and the freebies row that is engulfing him and his party. In a resignation letter, she criticised the decision to keep the two-child benefit cap and means test the winter fuel payment, and accused the Prime Minister of hypocrisy over his acceptance of free gifts from donors. In other news, it's been revealed that Boris Johnson considered raiding a Dutch warehouse over a vaccination row with the EU. At the time, the AstraZeneca vaccine was at the heart of a cross-channel row, with the former Prime Minister claiming the EU was slowing down the pace of the rollout in the UK. According to an extract from his memoir, Mr Johnson convened a meeting of senior military officials back in March 2021 to discuss the plans, which even he admitted were, quote, nuts. Now, at least 45 people have been killed after Hurricane Helene made its way across the southeast of the United States, leaving millions without power. Emergency crews are racing to rescue people trapped in flooded homes after the Category 4 hurricane struck the coast of Florida last night. It is one of the most powerful storms ever to hit the United States. The King and Queen have visited Holyrood to mark the 25th anniversary of the Scottish Parliament being reconvened. The celebration showcased Scottish music and culture and was attended by local heroes who have been nominated thanks to their contribution to local communities. Meanwhile, the King also has been leading tributes for national treasure Dame Maggie Smith after she passed away yesterday at the age of 89. In a statement, the King praised her warmth and wit, while the Prime Minister remarked she was beloved by so many for her great talent. She leaves 2 sons and 5 loving grandchildren who are devastated by the loss of their extraordinary mother and grandmother. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Mark.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Many thanks to my good friend Sophia Wensler. Well, developing tonight, respected Labour MP Rosie Duffield, who has clashed with Sir Keir Starmer over women's rights and trans issues, has sensationally resigned the party whip. She's left the Labour Party and will serve as an independent. We'll get reaction to this political bombshell and more bad headlines for Keir Starmer with the papers and my top pundits at 10:30. Plus, the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary have attacked Donald Trump in the past, but now Sir Keir Starmer meets the man who some believe will be the next president of the United States. So, if Trump wins, is it game over for their special relationship? We'll head to the United States for reaction. So, lots to get through, but first, my take at 10. Like a stubborn case of chlamydia, he's back. Silver-haired superstar Phillip Schofield's ITV career ended in dramatic fashion in May of last year when he admitted to what he described as an ill-judged but not illegal relationship with a much younger male colleague. He reportedly first met the co-worker while giving a talk at a drama school where the lad was then a 15-year-old student. Schofield, we're told, later arranged a job interview for the co-worker at This Morning, where he was hired as a production assistant. Now, let's be clear that no law was broken. But Schofield got the boot, having lied to his family, to his lawyers, to ITV, to his co-star, and to his agent about the affair. Now, let's be clear that Schofield was the #1 presenter in the country. By the way, I'm at least in the top 10. But the bottom line is that Schofield was huge. He ruled the This Morning sofa with an iron fist. He was the king of mid-mornings, pulling in hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, topped up by a vast portfolio of commercial endorsements that would have even David Beckham blushing. But the man who started his career in the BBC broom cupboard, which is ironic given that he spent so long in the closet, has been given a second chance with an appearance on the Channel 5 survival show Castaway, in which he's stuck on a remote desert island with only snakes and alligators for company. You have to pity the snakes and alligators, don't you? They won't be able to get a wink of sleep knowing that they're in the proximity of such a reptile. The truth is that Schofield wasn't the only victim of his own behaviour, effectively taking his own co-star on This Morning, Holly Willoughby, down with him, due to a perception among viewers that she ought to have known about the inappropriate relationship that was happening all along. Holly and Phil started as such a promising partnership, winning armfuls of top TV awards and earning massive contracts. But then came their catastrophic decision to skip the queue for a peek at the Queen's coffin prior to the funeral of our great monarch. The British people have a sense of fair play. And even the aforementioned David Beckham, one of the richest and most famous men in the world, was quite happy to wait his turn to pay his respects. But this TV power couple thought that they were above that, and that's when their relationship with the British public began to unravel. Now, I can forgive Phillip Schofield an affair with a younger colleague. This was consensual and legal. But you can't play Mr. TV nice guy when conducting a relationship which is clearly ill-advised, where there is a clear power imbalance, and then lie to everyone about it afterwards. Now, I understand from my sources that the young person involved has been forced to leave TV. There were reports of this young guy working in a bar at the time, and when this story broke, I offered him a job on Mark Dolan Tonight, because I wouldn't be slipping him my phone number. Of course, when it comes to Schofield, the TV bosses are ready to forgive and forget, because they're as shallow as a puddle in the Sahara Desert. But there is a problem. There's a stumbling block. There is a barrier to Phillip Schofield's grand return. And that barrier is you, the great British public. I don't think you'll have it. I remember covering this story at the time without fear or favour, just as we went after the Hugh Edwards story and received dog's abuse for that. But your emails at the time about Schofield were furious. You considered him to be a TV phony, Mr. Fake. Do you remember the vomit-worthy performance of Holly and Phil when they went back on This Morning after the scandal emerged? Smiling and giggling and pretending everything was normal, and there's nothing to see here. Taking you, the great British public, for mugs. What an insult. And seeing Schofield on TV again will stick in the craw for many people shocked by his actions at the time. And God knows what this young lad and his family are going through to see him back on the box. And in the show, he's having a big old moan, saying the following: when you throw someone under the bus, you've got to have a really bloody good reason to do it. Well, Phil, lying to everyone around you is not a great start, is it? But he goes on. He says, I got into telly because I love the nuts and bolts of telly. Well, you do like the nuts, don't you, Philip? I'll give you that. He goes on to say, I never wanted to be famous. I'm not fussed about that. Do me a favour. This is a guy that's been on TV since the age of 19. 4 decades on the box. And he doesn't want to be famous, except that he's just put himself back on TV in spite of more than a healthy bank balance. It's interesting, isn't it, that Phillip Schofield chose a remote desert island for his comeback. If only he'd stayed there. I'm sure he'll be missed by the snakes and alligators. OK, your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. Are you happy to see Phillip Schofield back on the box? I'll get to your messages shortly, but first, tonight's top pundits. I'm delighted to have Linda Jubilee, David Oldroyd Bolt, and the one and only Precious Muir. Good to see all three of you, and lots to get our teeth into in this hour, particularly another political crisis for Sir Keir Starmer as Labour MP Rosie Duffield renounces the Labour whip. But, Precious, let me start with Phillip Schofield. Back on telly. Does he deserve it?
I think 10 days weren't long enough. I honestly believe he should have stayed there. It's an absolute pathetic attempt for sympathy. I think that he should not be on Channel 5. He shouldn't be on any TV show. He should just go somewhere and stay there. I don't believe that he should be on a TV show saying, oh, you know, have some sympathy for me. What happened to me? I'm so sad and nobody else supported me. You lied to everyone around you. We have no sympathy. I will not be watching the show, and I don't think he deserves to be on Castaway.
No crime has been committed. This guy has a right to earn a living, David Oldroyd Bolt. What's the problem?
I must admit, I don't really see why people are getting aerated about this. As far as I'm aware, Phillip Schofield's not in holy orders. He's not an elected politician. And therefore, why is anybody looking to him for a virtuous lead in how to live a life? What I think was particularly loathsome was the way that he dragged his poor wife on television while making his admission of his sexual preferences and forcing her to stand there. I thought that was really incredibly cruel. And in that regard, I think he does deserve castigation.
Also, is it brave to come out as gay in 2022? I mean, Elton John did it in 1976.
Yeah, and making your wife go along with it was dreadful. I just don't really see the fuss about it. If he goes on Channel 5 and you don't like him, don't watch it.
OK, well, Linda, what do you think about this? You're a sort of an esteemed media observer. What's your view?
I think that narcissism is often an overworked word, but I think that's what he is. He is a narcissist because he seems to be in love with his own image. And it all circulates around that. He's always the hero of his own drama. And although that's not a crime and it's not a sin and we don't have to hate him for that, I think being dishonest with the general public is. And I think that when you're on air, as often as he was, and you are seen by many millions of people, you do become a role model. It does matter how you act. It's really very important. And actually, he was dishonest. I agree with Precious. I don't think he should be on the airwaves at all.
He should not be given a platform.
But if you compare that, I mean, I mentioned Hugh Edwards. The only reason I mentioned that is because I got dogs abuse for covering that story, but I thought it was in the national interest, and of course it has proven to be. Now, of course, the Phillip Schofield thing is not even in the same universe as a story. Phillip Schofield is a guy that came out as gay. He had a relationship with somebody that, I think this chap was 20 by the time they actually had a relationship. I mean, this goes on. This is life, isn't it, Precious? Isn't this what happens?
No, this is not what... People
fall in love, people have relationships...
No, this is not what happens. This is why this is an issue. We cannot be in society being so accepting of such behaviour, especially when somebody's on television. And he has been a role model to young children, to women, to people that are watching his television shows. And he can't behave this way.
For an older guy to date somebody younger?
While he was still married, Mark.
Have you never heard of the Rolling Stones?
He was still married.
It's not quite Bill Wyman and a 14-year-old.
No,
I think it says more about the state of modern Britain that a television producer is such a role... Oh, sorry, a television presenter is such a role model.
We are, I must admit. It's a great pressure.
I agree with you.
Let me tell you...
Doesn't it say that we're a rather denuded society?
Let me tell you, being the nation's role model, it is a burden I carry every night.
Well, you're my role model.
You know, I'm lucky because I am godlike, so that's fine. But listen, the bottom line is, Linda, we're all human. That's my point about Phillip Schofield. Is this not, in a way, a sort of kicking a man when he's down?
No, not at all. I think that the fact is that when he met the lad was only 15, and he instigated a relationship when he was considerably older, and he was, in the hierarchy of ITV, many levels above him.
So you think there was a power imbalance in that relationship?
Well, there was a power imbalance. That's the whole point. That's what made it, one of the things that made it so wrong. And I think to hear Phillip Schofield describe this as some kind of, you know, drama in which he plays the hero was so nauseating.
And to be given an opportunity like this that could have gone to somebody else.
Very briefly, David, in a normal company, let's say an accountancy firm, would it be inappropriate for a powerful 55-year-old executive to date a 20-year-old intern?
I think very clearly it would be a disciplinary issue. So on that basis, I completely agree with the castigation of Schofield. I just find the whole thing rather banal. He's a television presenter who's fallen off the edge of his own moral cliff.
Oh, nicely put. What a poet David Aldroy-Bolt is. I'm delighted to say my pundits are back at 10:30 for the papers and this developing story that Rosie Duffield, Labour MP, has renounced the Labour whip. A massive headache for the Prime Minister. We'll tackle that shortly. But next up, the PM and the Foreign Secretary who attacked Donald Trump very often in the past. But now Sir Keir Starmer has met the man who some polls believe will be the next president. So if Trump wins, is it game over for the special relationship? I'll be asking our top US correspondent, Kinsey Schofield, live from California, next.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
And we've got a treat, not only to have you here, but you've brought loads of exclusives for us this morning.
Well,
your chat with Robert Jenrick.
Just for you, Ellie. Yeah, Robert Jenrick, of course, is the front-runner to be Tory leader.
He is now, yeah.
Amongst Tory MPs, yeah. And he's been talking to us for my podcast, Chopper's Political Podcast, about immigration, about criminals being released from prison. Also, really importantly...
most importantly, some would say.
Yeah, biscuits. Now,
biscuits.
He was, I should explain to viewers, Robert Jenrick, during the COVID pandemic, had to pull together a hamper of goods for those isolating, and he put in a special biscuit.
Yes.
Here's what he had to say on the podcast.
We'll move on to the future and what your plans are. Your biggest achievement in government, what do you reckon it was? I know what it was.
Well, you go first.
Yeah, custard creams.
I thought you were going to say that I saved a penny. That was another one of our campaigns, yeah.
But custard creams, briefly, I mean, you were the community secretary. You had to provide food boxes during the COVID pandemic, and what did you put into those food boxes?
Custard creams, the people's favourite biscuit.
What else is there?
The people's favourite biscuit. Now, across the country...
Aidan.
Coffees are being dropped across the country.
Yeah,
is that really the people's favourite biscuit, Aidan?
Listen, you'll never change my opinion. I like shortbread, but I like it homemade. With a sprinkling of sugar. Listen, I'm type 1 diabetic. I had to be quite moderate in terms of my intake, but goodness me.
I mean,
a nice cup of tea.
That's a good one.
It's about the shape as well. If you show, some more intelligent biscuit companies, they will make shapes of biscuit that fit into the tea. There's nothing worse than when you put it into a narrow cup and it won't
go in, will it? You can't hit the...
So you like the triangular...
Not really triangular.
No, fingers.
Just something a bit elongated that I can turn sideways and dip in like that.
Got you.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Lots to get through. We've got a developing story, which is that Rosie Duffield, Labour MP, has renounced the Labour whip. She's resigned as a Labour MP. A massive headache for Sir Keir Starmer. We'll tackle that at 10:30 in the papers. Could things get worse for the Prime Minister? Well, let's get US news now, because it relates to Keir Starmer, in the company of Kinsey Schofield, the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting. Kinsey, good to see you. And our new Prime Minister meets a man who would like to be the next president. Starmer meets Trump. That's a big deal.
Mark, Kinsey Schofield, no relation. No relation to Phillip Schofield. Just want to confirm.
Disowning him right there.
Yeah, I just want my Google alerts. My Google search is. I just want to make sure everybody knows, unrelated. But according to Politico, Americans view this meeting as Keir Starmer's charm offensive, after numerous senior members in the Labour Party criticized the former president and the current candidate throughout the years. Now the pair enjoyed a 2-hour dinner at Trump Tower. Trump's territory. That must be nice in New York. And this was after Starmer delivered his speech at the UN General Assembly. But we believe they had a very nice meeting, just kind of reiterating how important the relationship is between America, between your country. And this was the first face-to-face meeting between the two men ever.
Indeed. And let's not underestimate Donald Trump. He's a charismatic guy, isn't he? He's entertaining, and he will have charmed the socks off Keir Starmer.
I'm sure that Keir went home with a lot of stories. I'm sure that he has shared quite a few of them amongst his friends and family. But what Politico really found interesting about this meeting is that the Prime Minister and VP were unable to find time to meet with each other. And they felt like the fact that Keir was still willing to meet Trump and not Kamala, an unorthodox approach, indicates that the new British government's eagerness to win over, the possible next occupant of the Oval Office is very important to them.
Most definitely. Do you think that the special relationship is in safe hands with Sir Keir Starmer if Trump wins? Or does Trump hold a grudge after the things that our Foreign Secretary David Lammy has said about him in the past?
I think that, Trump has said that Keir is so popular. Trump is kissing up too. So, I've seen the poll numbers when it comes to Keir as of recently. So I think as long as everybody plays nice, our relationship will continue to blossom.
I want to get to Queen Camilla and Charles in a second, but can I just ask you how the race for the White House is going? Do we have a clear winner at the moment, Kinsey?
I'd say ignore the polls. Every poll says something different. There's no clear theme, no clear front runner, and polls do not properly reflect the mood. You can just look back at 2016 and see that.
Too close to call. Let's talk about Prince Harry on his own in New York City. What's going on?
Yeah, so Harry's week in NYC was, I think it was more than glad-handing and networking. It was an extreme attempt to rehabilitate his image from Ginger Whinger and TMI Todger guy to global thought leader and Mr. Cool running after Jimmy Fallon. He was associating with the Clintons. He was delivering compelling speeches on children and social media. But instead of the world covering some of these potentially impressive moments, Meghan Markle kind of hijacked his time to shine with her highly choreographed crisis management piece in Us Weekly about what a wonderful and non-problematic boss she is. We have people out here saying it was selfish, ego-driven, and poorly executed, poorly placed in a grocery store gossip mag. And these are not just my observations. A former strategist for President Obama that witnessed Harry's activity in NYC told the New York Post something very similar.
Indeed. Meghan Markle has a very, what can we say, checkered history when it comes to employment relations, doesn't she, with the team under her?
Yes, and that is what this is about. The Hollywood Reporter saying that she still has issues, she still is potentially Duchess difficult, and Meghan fighting back in an Us Weekly magazine, allowing some of her current employees to talk on the record.
Indeed. Listen, Queen Camilla is embracing social media. Is she going to go on TikTok?
You know, Vicky Perrin, the CEO of Camilla's charity, the Queen's Reading Room, says never say never. But I'm going to be honest with you, Mark. I hope that they don't go on TikTok. I think it's a hellhole. And according to Amnesty International, TikTok's content, the recommended page system, and aside from being invasive when it comes to data collection practices, they say it poses a danger to young users of the platform by amplifying depressive and suicidal content that risk worsening existing mental health challenges. So don't do it, Queen Camilla. You're too good. If Donald Trump becomes president, he might shut it down. He threatened to the last time around.
It's true. Well, it's, of course, very closely connected to the Chinese Communist Party and therefore ought to send a shiver down our collective spines. Let's talk about Charles and Camilla, the King and Queen in Scotland. And I asked producer Maria to just select some footage of King Charles in Scotland because I want to point out and ask you whether you would agree, Kinsey, that the King knows how to wear a kilt. Take a look at this. I mean, how smart does he look? And the
I can't believe I'm saying this. I think I have a crush on him when he's wearing a kilt. I mean, this is coming from a Diana fan, so I think that speaks volumes.
Most definitely. I mean, he is an elegant man, and he's, of course, back to very visible public duties following his cancer diagnosis. And he and the Queen really look the part up there in Scotland, don't they?
They looked like they were having a blast. This was to mark the 25th anniversary of the Scottish Parliament. Despite the King undergoing cancer treatment, it is so important for him to be at events like this. Yeah. And he gave a beautiful speech talking about how we are all united in our love for Scotland. And they met with local heroes. They saw some musical numbers, some cultural performances. And we know that the King has been relentless about getting back to work as much as possible, with the Queen trying to rein him in, pun intended.
Most definitely. Kinsey, always a thrill. We'll see you in a week's time. If you want to check out Kinsey's work, head to her website, To Die For Daily, and listen to her podcast of the same name. Let me tell you, next up, a resignation crisis that rocks Keir Starmer's premiership. I'm not overselling this. A Labour resignation. We'll get reaction in tomorrow's papers with my pundits in 2 minutes. Don't go anywhere.
Good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead to Sunday, it's going to be dry in the east, wet and windy in the west, with heavy spells of rain and strong winds. So we've had a ridge of higher pressure over us through today and through this evening, so that's giving some settled conditions. But this is the area of low pressure waiting out in the wings for Sunday. But back to this evening, many places seeing a dry night tonight with clear spells. We'll still see a few showers around, especially across northwestern England and across Scotland as well. But on the whole, we'll see some clear skies, and that will allow temperatures to fall. So we may see a touch of frost, but also some mist and fog patches to start Sunday morning. But it will be a chilly start out there for some of us, especially across parts of Scotland, where we'll see a touch of frost in the sheltered glens. But still, across Orkney, we have got some longer spells of rain here and a few showers further towards the west. Across Northern Ireland, cloudier skies in association with that area of low pressure. But further to the east you go, drier here with plenty of bright or hazy sunshine to start Sunday morning. But it's going to be a different feel further towards the west. We've got stronger winds, and we have got a Met Office wind warning in force through Sunday with gusts 50 to 60 miles per hour, as well as some heavy outbreaks of rain. But further the east you are, that's where we'll hold on to the best of the sunshine, perhaps just some milky skies out there, feeling pleasant in the sunshine, up to 14 degrees in the north and slightly milder further towards the south. But unsettled for many of us on Monday. We also have a rain warning in force for southern parts of England and Wales, so expect some difficult driving conditions and further flooding. Unsettled as well across Northern Ireland and Scotland throughout much of Monday, but turning drier as we head into Tuesday and Wednesday with temperatures up to 18 degrees. Bye-bye.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
The king of breakfast TV is back. That's right, Britain's favourite TV host, Eamon Holmes, returns to Britain's hottest breakfast programme. Breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It is 10:30, so time for this. Tomorrow's front page is hot off the press, courtesy of Bobby. The Sunday Times, Israel strikes huge blow, but braces for revenge. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, said tonight that the killing of Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, would change the balance of power in the Middle East. Also, the King, I believe my mother chose to end her days at Balmoral. Surrounded by her family and nature, Scotland was where Queen Elizabeth felt most at peace every summer, so much so, the King has said, that she chose to end her days there. In a speech at Holyrood, marking the 25th anniversary of the Scottish Parliament, King Charles spoke of Scotland's uniquely special place in the hearts of his own family. And what about this for a political bombshell? I'm going to get full pundit reaction in just a moment. Rosie Duffield, highly respected Labour MP, has sensationally resigned the Labour whip, blaming Sir Keir Starmer's cruel and unnecessary policies and the freebies row that is engulfing him and the party. Duffield has become the fastest MP to jump ship after a general election in modern political history. She's writing to the Prime Minister tomorrow, informing him of her decision to resign the whip with immediate effect. A damning assessment there, and that caps off, I think we can all agree, a week to forget for the Prime Minister. Sunday Mirror now. Knots stab victim families. BBC made trauma a million times worse. Grieving families say a BBC show about a triple killer made their trauma a million times worse. Valdo Colcane knifed 2 students and a school caretaker in Nottingham in 2023. The victims' relatives have put in an official complaint saying Panorama snubbed them and was too sympathetic to the killer's family. Observer now. Iran threatens vengeance over Hezbollah chief's assassination. Labour MP resigns whip over party's cruel policies. Daily Star Sunday. Boffs warn beasties may be hiding in dirty pants. Beware spiders in your grundies. I'll have to check yours in a minute, David. Watch out if you're planning on slipping on a pair of used kecks. They could be harbouring randy spiders ready to bite you on the bum. And that's really the last thing anyone needs first thing in the morning. Nervous giggles from the pundits there. Sunday Express, Kemi's vow to stop the boats. Tory leadership hopeful Kemi Badenoch tonight announced she's ready to tear up human rights laws to stop the migrant boats. In a major intervention, she vowed to do whatever is necessary to smash people smuggling gangs and take back control of Britain's borders. Bonnie King Charlie is a hero of Hollywood. Hollywood is the other headline. And last but not least for now, the Sunday Telegraph. Labour MP quits over freebies scandal. Edwards must take responsibility for his actions. Mariella Frostrup, the veteran 61-year-old journalist, TV presenter and campaigner, said in an interview with The Telegraph that Hugh Edwards, disgraced BBC newsreader, has no remorse and that his reaction to the scandal has made it worse. Also, Boris, I'm no longer sure medieval lockdowns defeated COVID. Boris Johnson has said he's no longer sure that they were the right policy, describing the pandemic restrictions as literally medieval in their savagery and consequences. He likened himself to King Canute. Well, if you rearrange the letters of that word, you might get close to the truth. And questioned whether it was possible for government action to repel the waves of a highly contagious disease. Yeah, some of us were saying that for a long time, weren't we?
Yes.
Joe Biden hails killing of Nasrallah as justice for thousands of victims. Badenoch, not all cultures are equally valid. This according to Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leadership candidate, who's making plenty of headlines today, has said that most politicians shy away from talking about immigration in terms of culture as opposed to economics, as they fear it's too controversial. Badenoch explained that culture is more than cuisine or clothes, but is also customs, which may be at odds with British values. Interesting stuff. Well, look, let's get reaction now from my top pundits this evening. I'm delighted to welcome David Oldroyd-Bolt, Linda Jubilee and Precious Muir. And Linda, we've got to start with this political bombshell. It's been a week to forget for Sir Keir Starmer, that disastrous conference speech and, of course, controversy around the freebies scandal and of course, the winter fuel allowance, which will be taken away from 10 million pensioners. So it's all bad headlines, but it gets worse. Top Labour MP, a very high-profile figure, gender-critical politician, Rosie Duffield quits Labour, breaking a political record. This is bad news, isn't it?
I didn't realise he'd actually broke that political record. But if you read the whole of the quite long resignation letter, it's split into two parts. She feels let down by the cronyism and corruption and the gifts and the donations, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But she criticises policies. Now, it's the criticism of those policies which is far more damaging to Keir Starmer. That's the real problem here. To have come out so clearly, and that letter is excoriating. It's tough, and I think it will have a permanently damaging effect on the Prime Minister.
Well, there you go. Let's have a look. I've just sent this by my top producer, Mel Thorpe, who has said, shared the article. Rosie Duffield, David, sleaze, nepotism and greed. Why I'm quitting Labour. Those words are going to linger in the memory, aren't they?
I cannot think of an instance of a government beginning so badly with such an enormous majority in British political history. It really is quite extraordinary. And I think this is yet another instance of why Keir Starmer's government is going to struggle to make it all the way through.
Mathematically, it can't fall, though, can it?
Not unless... well, no, he has a large majority, but... it depends on the confidence in which he is held by his MPs.
Yes.
And
and she stated in her two-page resignation letter.
For instance, he could fall as leader, but also he could be brought down by a confidence motion if sufficient of his MPs think that he is morally and ethically not able to lead them anymore, which... You know, what are we, two and a half months in? And it's week after week, scandal after scandal, complaint after complaint. Rosie Duffield is a serious figure in the Labour Party and has, I think, got a sort of national appeal beyond Labour politics. For her to go in this way with this wonderfully vicious resignation letter, I think shows that Starmer is in serious trouble.
Well, yes, Precious, we love having you on the show because you don't pull your punches, and Rosie Duffield certainly hasn't in this letter, has she?
No, she went all in, I think.
She went postal.
She definitely
she gave
was...
it both barrels.
She everything she got.
Yeah.
She really just... You could just feel the emotion in the two-page resignation letter. She really just was saying how she felt, how she feels her colleagues feel, the disappointment, because obviously she's looking up to someone who's going to lead Labour Party in the right direction, and she feels like people have voted for that type of Labour Party and they're getting something completely different.
Yeah.
So in this letter, she just describes every single thing of what she's actually really sad about and disappointed about.
It's interesting at the end of the letter, she says that this may not actually be permanent, that she has taken this step. One day she wants to see her way back. I mean, that's almost an oblique way.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah.
It's almost
Under
an oblique reference to coming back under someone else.
Indeed, as she won't return under Starmer, who actually loves to suspend the whip himself from his own party members who don't support his legislation, which we saw over the two-child benefit cap.
Yes.
Is this just teething problems for a new government, do you think? I mean, you could argue Starmer's got 4.5 years to sort this out. Will he, Precious?
I don't think that somebody would come out who's so, well respected in her position to come out publicly and say this. So she pretty much has reached her limits and has explained what changes need to be made. And for him to realise that things that's happening should not be happening in the Labour Party.
Well, the problem, Linda, as well, is that there is no deep well of goodwill towards Keir Starmer within the Labour movement or the parliamentary party, is there?
That's a big problem.
This is not a sort of a popular figure, a sort of across the board within Labour.
No, not at all. And I think to go back a point, you talk about, or people talk about teething problems. I mean, we're not talking about the kindergarten here. We're talking about British politics. He's had 14 years to prepare for this. It's not difficult to think about what your strategy and what your tactics might be.
And it's not difficult to say no to 20 grand's worth of accommodation or two grand for glasses.
But Samantha Cameron wore a dress from Marks and Spencer's to the party conference, not a £1,000 dress by Edlan Lai, you know, a really top handmade dress. You know, it's just... These are very stupid, unforced errors which are really leaving a nasty taste in the mouth.
Most definitely. What do you think that the sort of Labour ranks will be making of all of this now? You know, I mean, we know how Machiavellian the Tories are, and the 1922 committee would be gathering, the ERG wouldn't be happy. Is the Labour Party, the parliamentary party, David, is it more loyal? Are they going to stick with Starmer for the time being? Or could there be rumblings already?
Well, they'll stick with him for the time being because he's got a socking great majority. But I think the Labour Party is even more febrile and even more like a bunch of rats in a sack than the Tories. And historically speaking, anyway. You know, don't forget that they were fighting when they were first ever in government in the 1920s. They fought during the 1930s. They expelled Ramsay MacDonald, their own leader, from the party because he formed a national government coalition with the Conservatives. The Labour Party loves to fight among itself. There's a reason that there's a Monty Python sketch about the People's Front of Judea and the Judean People's Front. The left just splits and splits and splits. I think what this does is reinforce an idea that Starmer is arrogant and really doesn't care what the rest of his party thinks about him because he's determined to rule in this dictatorial, autocratic manner with a very small cadre of extremely loyal people.
It's like he's in a bubble of one.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of contradicting himself because you can't, you know, take away the winter fuel allowance to those people that need it, but then you're going on trips and holidays and sitting in box seats at the Arsenal.
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily congruent. The winter fuel allowance was a stupid policy that should always have been means-tested, and he was doing what politicians always do, which is to take largesse. David Cameron, it was in the papers yesterday, had gifts of clothing while he was Prime Minister. Tony Blair stayed on holiday in various people's...
Well, but it's like, it's coming from one person, though, isn't it? The donor is this individual, is Lord or something.
In this instance, it is from one donor, but for instance, when when Blair was going on holiday at Cliff Richard's villa, for instance, or when Osborne was on yachts with Oleg Deripaska and Rothschild, you know, this is just part of what goes on at the top levels of business, finance, the media, let us say.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to gather rich friends and haven't made any jump yet. But
you should talk
and get yacht holidays.
I keep tweeting Bill Gates, but no joy. And I keep telling him I've been vaccinated, let's be friends, but it's not happening. Linda...
That's what the public don't like.
Yeah.
And you know, you can say they're wide of the mark, you can say they're being naive, but they don't like to live the lives they lead and watch all this going on. They just don't like it. And when it comes to voting, they will show their displeasure.
Well, I think this is going to be proved true.
Most definitely. Well, listen, folks, we've got lots more to come. And I've got a new tweet that's come in from another Labour MP attacking Rosie Duffield, who's just resigned the whip. This civil war is turning nasty. I'll bring you details on that in just a moment. Is Keir Starmer already under pressure? Will he still be the leader of the Labour Party at the next election? I have my doubts. We'll debate that further. Plus, a shocking story in tomorrow's Sun newspaper. I'll just give you the top line. Monster Al Fayed's indecent proposal to Princess Diana. And that's come from Paul Burrell. More on that next.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Richard, you know, the King will probably fly there, I would imagine, with the Queen. You can guarantee they'll have to make a point about offsetting their carbon just to keep that lot happy. They won't use the walkabout term because they'll have to keep the Aboriginal community happy over there. Obviously, they'll be fine that the Queen's face has now been taken off banknotes over there, replaced, I believe, by a member of the Aboriginal community, naturally. You know, you've got all of these tick boxes that the King and the royal family have to do, instead of just maybe, I don't know, leading, being there, being present. Why do they keep bowing down to this stuff?
Well, firstly, as I say, I mean, if you look at the Commonwealth, there are 56 countries. Now, I think that's an enormously important institution, and we benefit in all sorts of ways, as do the other countries who are members of it. Now, if you don't take account, with times changing, by the way, of course, as they did during Queen Elizabeth's reign, if you don't take account of various sensitivities, especially certain pressure groups, I'm not suggesting that we write off our history as being something that's dreadful. There are ups and downs and pluses and minuses, we all know that. But the point is to be sensitive to other cultures, and that is absolutely pivotal.
What we're seeing in the UK, a lot of these same issues do crop up in Australia, especially with freedom of speech and saying the wrong thing, getting cancelled. I've met with so many people who have personally, like, they've been deplatformed, lost their jobs just for having an opinion, just for potentially saying the wrong thing, and then losing their livelihood as a result. So with Australia, I think particularly this is the trend that we saw from 2020 with the lockdowns, especially in Melbourne, some of the harshest lockdown restrictions in the world. Now, Australia is known as being a country of freedom and liberty. So then I think for many Australians, it was a huge turning point, a big wake-up call.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. A shocking story about Mohammed Al Fayed and Princess Diana. But first, the Labour civil war, well, becomes more egregious. It heats up by the minute because let me tell you, if you're just joining us, that the highly respected Labour MP Rosie Duffield, who has clashed with Sir Keir Starmer over trans issues and women's rights, has sensationally resigned the Labour whip. She's made history, actually, for the fastest resignation from a political party in recent political history. And here's the headline: Rosie Duffield, sleaze, nepotism and greed, why I'm quitting Labour. A massive headache for the Prime Minister Keir Starmer. We'll be tackling this on tomorrow's edition of Mark Dolan Tonight. But this evening from Nadia Whittome, who is a fellow Labour MP, and I think you'd call this friendly fire. This is red on red. Thank you, team. We've got the tweet up already. Look at that. The show's not just thrown together, is it? Nadia Whittome says, no matter your views on her stated reasons for quitting, Rosie Duffield has made a political career out of dehumanising one of the most marginalised groups in society. She should never have been allowed the privilege of resigning. Labour should have withdrawn the whip long ago.
It's ludicrous.
Wow. Linda Jubilee, what exactly is Rosie Duffield's great crime here? What is Nadia Whittome referring to?
Well, she's obviously talking about Rosie Duffield's views on sex and gender.
And are they controversial?
They are controversial, but they are her views. She is entitled to have them. I don't really understand why this Labour MP is tanking into the debate in this way. I mean, the fact is she should never have been allowed the privilege of resigning. That is a ludicrous comment to make.
Well, it most definitely is. Well, I'm delighted to say producer Maria, being outstanding as she is, has got the actual statement now, or part of it, from Rosie Duffield. Here's what she had to say. It's the outgoing Labour MP. She's just resigned the party. The sleaze, nepotism and apparent avarice are off the scale. I'm so ashamed, she says, of what you, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and your inner circle have done to tarnish and humiliate our once proud party. Now, the problem, Linda, is that this is a figure within Parliament who'll be very vocal now as an independent and quite the thorn in the side.
Thorn in the side, indeed. I mean, I used the word excoriating earlier, and that's what this letter was. It was deeply, deeply unpleasant towards Keir Starmer about his character. Now, that's a big development. And politics, you know, the policies are important. It's important that you criticise politics. Politics is about perception, but it's also about character.
Isn't this character assassination of Keir Starmer? This is a guy that's just become Prime Minister. He's got a massive mandate to lead the country, to deliver change. Arguably, Labour have inherited a financial mess from the Tories. The public services are on their knees. He's got a tough job of work, and he's the man to do it.
I don't think he is at all, and I don't think he has such a great mandate as has been made out. His support is wide but shallow, and the only reason he won that massive majority is because Tory voters stayed at home and voted Reform if they did come out. He clearly isn't capable of doing the job. He never has been. He's there foot demure because after Corbyn, who else was there, really?
But there's a guy who changed his party. He got rid of anti-Semitism. He made them electable and achieved an historic landslide.
To what degree he's succeeded in getting rid of anti-Semites within the Labour Party, I think, has been demonstrated to be somewhat questionable since October the 7th last year and the comments of Labour Party MPs in support of the Palestinians and Hamas and Hezbollah. I don't think they are remotely as lacking in anti-Semitism as we would like to think. As for his personal conduct, I think this is what I said to you a fortnight ago when I was last on the programme. Throughout his period as leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer set himself up as Lord High and Mighty moral arbiter of politics. He was pious, he was puritanical, he was po-faced, and he's been shown to have feet of clay. His own behaviour has been questionable, I think, is probably the lightest way we can put it. And the way in which his morality is being called into question already, I think, shows that it was hypocrisy at best and downright lying at worst.
Well, let me bring you a shocking headline now from tomorrow's Sun newspaper. That's the Sun on Sunday. Well, of course, the main front page is the footballer Andy Carroll, who is sadly to divorce his lovely wife, Billy. We wish them well in their future apart. But this, an exclusive in The Sun by Paul Burrell, Diana's former butler. Sex predator Mohammed Al-Fayed made an indecent proposal to Princess Diana. This, according to Paul Burrell, as I've said, the former Harrods boss, Al-Fayed, whose son Dodi dated Diana, suggested he would one day sleep with her. Shocked Diana felt sick and was really upset at the summer proposal. This was in 1995. And Precious Mule, after what we've heard about Mohammed Al-Fayed, with in excess of 60 women having come forward as potential alleged victims of his sexually predatory nature, this is more evidence of what a sickening man he was. And actually, anyone was a potential target, including the most famous woman in the world.
Yeah, I just think he had no... I mean, men like this in a powerful, you know, position, they use the power that they have to take advantage of women and, you know, individuals in any case. And so this is why it's really scary to know that even when he was around somebody like Princess Diana, he still didn't think that, you know, this is wrong behaviour to have. Do not do this.
No boundaries?
No boundaries at all, because as he thinks, money can buy everything. I have all the money in the world and I can do what I want and get away with it.
Yeah, it's not just that he knows no bounds, it's almost like having a medical condition. Predators like this...
Oh, yeah, they're mentally ill.
...crimes and offences on an industrial scale because they just can't help it.
Yeah.
It's not about relationships or even sex because that all takes a little bit of time. Yeah. It's about power that they can grab immediately. What surprises me about this is that Fayed, to use his proper surname...
Because the Al is fake, is that right? The Al-Fayed. Did he invent that?
Apparently so.
Well, no, he added it because in Arab cultures it's a sign of aristocratic lineage.
That's right.
It's like calling yourself Fon or De.
Yeah.
Right, yes. Or perhaps if I was an Dolan, I'd get more respect.
But apparently he made these remarks to Princess Diana before she had the relationship with Dodi Fayed.
Yeah.
This kind of brings her judgment into question, point one. Point two is, whenever a sexual predator like this goes down, he invariably taints other people as well. And I suspect this is Paul Burrell's attempt to safeguard Diana's reputation and her legacy, because he's always very keen on doing that.
But they're also, both of them are not here to speak up for themselves.
No,
so they both have passed. And so, like, we can't really get the story because neither one of them's alive anymore. So this is why it's all speculation. But, I mean, I guess we know what kind of person he is, so we will go with that.
David?
Call me uncharitable, but I think this is Paul Burrell's way of keeping himself in the news.
Yes,
Oh,
agreed.
yeah, there
And a
is that.
paycheck as well.
And
Yeah,
the fact,
he's right.
Paul's a very good friend of mine. I think
I'm
that's,
sure he's
an
delightful in
egregious libel. And when I've got the means, he'll be my personal butler, let me tell you. You can drive the Jag, David. My thanks to my brilliant pundits tonight, Linda, Precious and David. Most importantly, you for your company and the team for working so hard. And I'll see you tomorrow for Mark Dolan tonight. Headliners is next.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Looking ahead to Sunday, it's going to be dry in the east, wet and windy in the west, with heavy spells of rain and strong winds. So we've had a ridge of higher pressure over us through today and through this evening, so that's giving some settled conditions. But this is the area of low pressure waiting out in the wings for Sunday. But back to this evening, many places seeing a dry night tonight with clear spells. We'll still see a few showers around, especially across northwestern England and across Scotland as well. But on the whole, we'll see some clear skies, and that will allow temperatures to fall. So we may see a touch of frost, but also some mist and fog patches to start Sunday morning. But it will be a chilly start out there for some of us, especially across parts of Scotland, where we'll see a touch of frost in the sheltered glens. But still, across Orkney, we have got some longer spells of rain here and a few showers further towards the west. Across Northern Ireland, cloudier skies in association with that area of low pressure. But further to the east you go, drier here with plenty of bright or hazy sunshine to start Sunday morning. But it's going to be a different feel further towards the west. We've got stronger winds, and we have got a Met Office wind warning in force through Sunday with gusts 50 to 60 miles per hour, as well as some heavy outbreaks of rain. But further the east you are, that's where we'll hold on to the best of the sunshine, perhaps just some milky skies out there, feeling pleasant in the sunshine up to 14 degrees in the north and slightly milder further towards the south. But unsettled for many of us on Monday. We also have a rain warning in force for southern parts of England and Wales, so expect some difficult driving conditions and further flooding. Unsettled as well across Northern Ireland and Scotland throughout much of Monday, but turning drier as we head into Tuesday and Wednesday with temperatures up to 18 degrees. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win a whopping £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway. That's like having £3,000 each month for an entire year. Extra cash in your bank account that you can do whatever you like with. Take a year off and keep it to yourself. You don't even need to tell the taxman, as it's totally tax-free. For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB08 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
There's a huge financial and mental strain for parents, but we have this system now where it talks about they bringing a family member to help, but I don't think that's happening a lot of the time. I think people are having to be off work, look after their child, and often, sorry to say, but their school always calls the mum, and then you have this situation where you have nobody to look after your child. People's grandparents don't seem to want to do it so much, and often family members aren't just down the road. So what we have is no village, and I think it's really important when you have a child that you need that village.
Are children getting more sicker than they used to be, or is it just that we take the odd sniffle a bit more seriously now since 2020?
Yes, I do think the odd sniffle can be. I know in my school they say 3 days away, you know, the slightest little thing, and it's like...
If you have a cold?
Yeah, no, please, go in, yeah. And
3 days off if you have a cold for a child, and we wonder why all these parents aren't at work. I think some of these figures about people who could be working and aren't working, they're not necessarily on benefits, but some of them will be people who, during the pandemic, particularly parents, decided to get a different work-life balance. They quite liked being at home, and they realised the children are benefiting from it. Do you think those people are in these statistics, Annette?
Of people staying at home with not working?
Who decided to not go back to work of working age?
Yes, I think a lot of people don't want to go into an office anymore either. They've had that little bit of freedom and they're like, I'm not going in. And I know employers are trying to get them to go in, but they just want to be at home. They want to be near their children if their children are sick, whether that's the mum or the dad. And also, a lot of people don't live near their office or wherever. They don't want to commute. Train fares have gone up, so they say, well, why should I pay? So you have this whole knock-on effect throughout the economy.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines at 11 o'clock. David Lammy has spoken to the Lebanese Prime Minister following a series of Israeli airstrikes on Beirut. In a post on X, the Foreign Secretary said they had agreed on the need for an immediate ceasefire to bring an end to the bloodshed. It comes after the terrorist group Hezbollah confirmed their leader has been killed in airstrikes in southern Lebanon. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel settled the score with Nasrallah's death and it is a historic turning point, while US President Joe Biden says his death is a measure of justice for his many victims. The Lebanese Health Ministry is reporting that at least 11 people have now been killed and 108 wounded in the attack in central Beirut. Soldiers and aid workers have been taking part in rescue operations looking for survivors and victims in the rubble. Now, back in the UK, Rosie Duffield has resigned as a Labour MP. The Canterbury MP has resigned the Labour whip, accusing Sir Keir Starmer of pursuing cruel and unnecessary policies. In a resignation letter to the Prime Minister, she criticised the decision to keep the two-child benefit cap and means test the winter fuel payment and accused the Prime Minister of hypocrisy over his acceptance of free gifts from donors. In other news, the interim chair of the Conservative Party, Richard Fuller, will tell the membership that he is profoundly sorry for the election loss as he opens the party's conference tomorrow. Earlier Conservative Party leader Rishi Sunak arrived at the party's conference in Birmingham with his wife and they were greeted by the interim party chairman. Tory leadership candidate Kemi Badenoch was also seen arriving shortly before, followed by James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick and finally Tom Tugendhat. All candidates have the opportunity to address the conference and their campaigns will be lobbying MPs before parliamentarians pick the final two on October the 10th. The final result will be declared on the 2nd of November. Now to the US, where at least 45 people have been killed after Hurricane Helene made its way across the southeast of the United States, leaving millions without power. Emergency crews are racing to rescue people trapped in flooded homes after the Category 4 hurricane struck the coast of Florida last night. It is one of the most powerful storms ever to hit the United States. The King and Queen have visited Holyrood to mark the 25th anniversary of the Scottish Parliament being reconvened. The celebration showcased Scottish music and culture and was attended by local heroes who've been nominated thanks to their contribution to local communities.
From that day until this, through its work over a quarter of a century, this place has not just thrived, but in doing so, has borne witness to the enduring relationship between the Parliament, the Crown and the people of Scotland.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's time for Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Sunday's newspapers. I'm Nick Dixon and tonight I'm joined by Scottish asylum seeker Leo Kearse And BBC migrant Steve N. Allen. See what I did, guys? It was a themed intro.
So are you saying Steve is on this show legally?
Illegally, yes.
But I refuse to blend in.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to learn your ways.
He left out of protest. He didn't want to be like the other BBC presenters. Quick question, guys. Had any freebies lately?
Yeah, well, this jacket was actually bought from me by a millionaire.
Really? What did he spend the rest of the money on?
That wasn't really 50 quid from TK Maxx.
Nice.
I can show Keir Starmer how to shop on a budget if he likes.
Yeah, other budget outlets are available. Steve, any freebies?
No, the opposite of freebies. When we did the MASH report, which is my BBC thing, I was the only idiot who turned up wearing a suit for the character, and then wardrobe took it